Hi everyone and welcome to my Season 10 PTR feedback video for Diablo 4. The PTR has already concluded a few days ago. I was a bit pressed on time, so I'm making my video relatively late, but I want to give you my full point of view from what I have seen and also some feedback to the devs, of course, so that hopefully we're gonna get a better Season 10 update when the time comes at the 23rd of September. So I've been blasting the PTR with all the classes. I've tried basically everything that is new. So I spent a lot of time there testing mechanics, especially the new chaos items, the new Infernal Hordes. There's a lot of stuff they put in here, and it is probably the kind of biggest shake-up in terms of the build meta that we have seen through any season theme so far. So I think for people that really like to kind of cook their own builds and want to try something new, this is going to be an excellent season because there's a lot of stuff. And I think even post-patch launch, we're going to discover more things basically with the combinations of chaos items and the perks. It actually opens up a lot of really crazy stuff on some classes. So that is kind of cool as like a general baseline. On the other hand, it also kind of disrupts the overall game balance, the little that we had, I guess, because those chaos items and the power perks are very imbalanced between builds. So some builds really profit a lot, some builds really don't get much, and this is unusual, I guess, because most other season themes are relatively close in power in terms of what they offer towards a specific build. But here we have builds that get effectively close to nothing, and then we have other builds that get something like plus 20 pit tiers. So this is one of those examples on the extreme end. So this is just kind of what you can expect, but obviously it's also going to be kind of fun to explore the options. I also want to talk about the new unique items for all of the classes. I've tried them, and then the class bands in general, and obviously the new Infernal Hordes that we see here in action right now, which is kind of like one of the core themes for this season as well. So in Season 5 they introduced Infernal Hordes, and now they finally have done like an update on it to kind of modernize it a little bit and bring it more in line with other game systems. So I want to also talk through that. I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we continue, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, porkbun.com. If you don't know them already, they offer a service where you can register your own domains and benefit from plenty of other useful features, and they're trusted by hundreds of thousands of customers. And for you guys in particular, I want to show off their email hosting solution. They have partnered with ProtonMail to bring you reliable, secure, and encrypted email hosting with state-of-the-art features. So especially if you are a freelancer, entrepreneur, web designer, or similar, or if you're just a private person looking to upgrade your online presence, you want to check this out. Obviously, wudijo at maxwell.gg sounds a lot more serious and cool than xxgodgamer69xx@yahoo.com. But there's more to it than having a cool sounding email address. ProtonMail offers security and transparency. The best part is that you can build trust with the recipients of your emails by knowing that everything is end-to-end encrypted. Even the ProtonMail guys can't see what you're typing. On top of that, it's easy to set up in minutes. You can integrate your ProtonMail with your Porkbun domain and grow your plan depending on your needs and the number of accounts or devices you need. There are different plans available for you depending on your needs, starting at as little as $5.99 per month. And they come with extra perks such as the mail, calendar, VPN, a password manager, and your own drive storage. So ProtonMail offers top-notch service, high-quality products, and a very fair pricing. And if you're interested, then go check them out with the link in the description or the pinned comment. And now, let's go back to the rest of the video. All right, let's jump in and talk about Infernal Hordes. So this is kind of like the main update, I guess, because it's actually a permanent change. So they have updated this Infernal Hordes not just for this season, but this is going to be staying in the game, and going forward we will have this. And one of the biggest things that they have added here is the chaos waves. So you see this here right now. This whole season is themed around chaos items and chaos perks. And the new boss that they can now actually fight here in Infernal Hordes is Bartok, the Lord of Chaos. So this is kind of like where they put everything chaos basically in here. And the chaos waves are also kind of just like that. You can kind of get like anything. There's like a goblin wave. There's like a full Etherlord wave. There's like a wave where you have to like defend a mass from lunatics. Some stuff like that basically. There's like maybe 10 different ones or something like this. So this is kind of cool and kind of, gives you some break from the usual Infernal Hordes blasting that you normally do. In addition, they've also updated the perks, so you now have kind of like more impactful perks here, like for example, the Hellborn and the Ether Fiend modifiers and all that kind of stuff. Some of them are a bit juicier, but I do have to say that I'm actually not super impressed with this Infernal Hordes rework. Like the 9th rework was kind of like a bigger one than this, I think, and that was already too small for my taste. And in terms of Infernal Hordes, yeah, it's kind of funny that you have these, like for example, Goblin waves now. The visuals are also cool with like some of those chaos effects and so on. And yeah, some runs can be pretty crazy because of those chaos waves. But overall, I didn't actually enjoy it all that much. Mostly because I kind of liked this, build up your progression, like, the boon and bane system, where, I can try to invest into a certain strat, like the Hellborn or the Ether Fiends or the Ether Lords, and then try to, like, get more and more rewards out of that for changing how the Infernal Horde progresses. But when you choose the Chaos Wave, then you don't get to make another choice. And in this case, you kind of like lose the momentum of building up these synergies that give you like more and more adder towards the end, which personally I found to be some of the most fun experiences here. So I'm not really sure what to do about this, but yeah, personally, I guess I'm just not really much of an Infernal Hordes enjoyer. I never really have been. I've been doing it here and there a little bit, mostly just because I had to for the scrolls. And going forward, I think that will kind of remain that way for me. But to talk about the perks and the boons and banes here a little bit more in detail, the problem is also that they have not really managed to balance out those different choices a lot better. So in the past, Hellborn was king, and then there was like the Etherlord Elite strat as well, that was pretty close. And then everything else was like far behind, basically. And we have basically the same distribution again. So Hellborn is ridiculous. I've seen some people getting like 2,000 Ether with that. Also, like the Chaos Waves of the Goblins is pretty insane if you have a build, something like Lightning Spear or so, that can just like, one-shot everything around you. You can get a ton of Ether there. But outside of this, yeah, the Hellborn are insane. And it's basically the same distribution. So again, you have like the elites, maybe as a follow-up, then the other lords, and then, yeah, Soul Spires are still there. Everyone hates them. And not just that, Soul Spires got worse in their base functionality. So now you have to be inside, and the enemies also have to be inside the circle on a Soul Spire. And then there is an upgrade that allows you to have enemies outside of the circle, and you can stay alone in the circle to kill them. So as a range build, for example, you could then do that. But this is actually the current live game functionality already. So it's basically a downgrade. They made the thing that everyone hates worse. And that is kind of hilarious, I gotta say. And likewise, I just feel that most of the other like boons and banes that they have upgraded are just not really that impactful enough. And still not really that consistent enough to kind of like build really into like one strat and then get like a crazy run with Adder. And then you have this disruption for like Chaos Waves as well, where, yeah, it just kind of feels like all over the place to me. And that is quite significant sum. If you have a bad run, you will just not be able to do Bartok. And Bartok is going to be most likely the best source, or one of the best sources of Chaos items in Season 10. And in general, you kind of just want to try to get him as often as you can when you're in Infernal Hordes, for example, so that you just get like his juicy loot. He has a lot of like Optosite and materials and so on that he also drops, which is kind of nice. And then you can still open the chest with the remaining Adder. So this is very well done for runs that work out well, but it also feels like the consistency really went down. And I actually had some runs where I got, I don't know, maybe half of what I needed to spawn Bartok. And I have other runs where I get like triple of what I needed. So there's like such a huge variance because of the perks and because of the Chaos Waves. So I'm not really sure if that is necessarily the way to go with this. I wish this would be a bit better balanced. Now let's talk about Chaos items. So that's basically the new seasonal theme that we've gotten like related to this whole Chaos theme that they're making for Season 10. The TLDR is you now have a list of items, both generic and class specific, that you can put into different slots. In particular on your armor slots here on the left. So you can have up to 5 of those chaos items. They always roll a maximum unique affix, and that is increased by 20%. So this is otherwise working like regular items. So you find them from boss loot, from Infernal Hordes and whatever. You equip them. You can have 1 of each unique. So you can't have 2 times the same unique or something like that. And the chaos items don't appear in the slot that the unique is originally designed for. So for example, a Crown of Lucian cannot appear as a helm, as a chaos version, but it can appear as a chest, glove, pants and boots, for example. And there's even some, for example, jewelry and weapons that can now go on the armor slots, which makes this whole system kind of interesting. So with that being said, yeah, we have a lot of options to like craft interesting things, because suddenly we can combine, you know, certain items that were never possible before. The Spurborn in particular get the biggest upgrades here, basically, because there's a lot of the quarterstaffs that are, you know, two-handed, that are kind of massive effects that you can now just put on your boots, for example. And then another quarterstaff on your pants. And then you can still wear one. So this is kind of crazy in some cases, especially Spurborn. There's a lot of really strong builds. And there's others where, for example, on the rogues, you don't really get much out of this, because they are like already pretty locked in most of their choices. So, you know, they maybe move this glove to the boots and the boots to the glove, and then both the perks are a little bit stronger, but this is about it in some cases. So that's also what I meant at the start of the video, where I was talking about the overall balance, just like, you know, being all over the place. Some builds really profit from this stuff. And then, of course, you have the chaos perks as well. So you have this here. In some cases, it's also pretty imbalanced stuff. So yeah, while the balance is really down bad, I guess it goes with the chaos theme as well, that everything is all over the place. And again, it leaves, like, you know, the door open for theory crafting, for exploration, and I think that is a good thing. I hear people say that they really like the system so much that they would like to have chaos items permanently in the game. I gotta say, I hard to disagree with this. I think it is okay for a season theme. It is fun to experiment with this, but I don't want to have the game permanently this broken, I gotta say. And not just that, it's also a really big hassle to deal with these kind of items, because basically they made like one unique art for a helm, a chest, and so on. So you see this here, this is like this armor set. And every item, regardless of which item it rolled, so this helm could be, you know, a Crown of Lucian, or this could be a Lokran, this could be a Band of First Breath, and so on. And they all look the same. So that is one thing that I really hate about the system, that when you look at a stash, you actually have to use the filter. If you look at your inventory, you can't even tell what is what. So this is like one of the main reasons why this should never stay in a game. But in general, obviously, you know, a unique item is designed with a certain like power budget in mind. And now this is like completely broken, right? It's like, you know, you suddenly put your quarterstaff on your boots, and that is obviously going to be ridiculously OP in some cases. And I really don't want to keep that in the game after the season. But it's going to be fun for season 10. And I guess we just have to accept that, you know, it's just cracked for a season. And this is what it is. So this is the list of the uniques that we have here. Overall, they have put quite a lot of good items in there, but some classes get a bit of like a short end of the stick. And I wish that they would try to like balance this out a little bit better. Again, especially for the rogues. Rogues are kind of down bad here, and I'm not sure what I could throw in there, but there's certainly some suggestions. Otherwise, yeah, Spiritborn are like on the opposite end. They're like ridiculous with all the quarterstaffs. But then, you know, they also have like all these other like random items that no one would ever really want to use as a chaos item. So it's just kind of like loot clutter, and no one really cares. And that is also a bit of an issue, because farming those chaos items is going to be tough. So it seems like when you do lair bosses, they drop roughly the same number as mythics, but lair bosses are not intended to be the best source of them. So the best source is probably like this whole Infernal Waves, Infernal Hordes, Bartok, and Helltides, I think. There's also some Chaos Writs going on there. So this is, I think, where you're getting most of those chaos items. But that being said, you know, each class has something like 20 possible choices with 4 to 5 different slots. And then you have, you know, a 1 in 4 to maybe hit the right GA in case that is necessary for you. So hitting the right chaos item in the right slot after you have, you know, kind of like puzzled together the rest of your setup can be extremely challenging. And those items are account bound, which I like. But overall, I do worry about the overall like farmability of these items, basically. I think a lot of people will probably be hyped, go in, try to make the build, or follow along for like, you know, one of our Maxwell guides or something like that, and then realize they just can't get this right item in the right slot. Not even talking about the right stats and the right rolls. So this is something that I fear is going to be a problem. And I would like to see some sort of maybe like a scroll crafting mechanic or something, where maybe I can take one of these uniques and then just, you know, reroll the slot, for example. So I take the you know, helm Balazan that I have here, and then I apply the scroll and it transforms into a different slot. So it becomes a glove. And then I do that, it becomes a chest. And then doing that, maybe goes back to helm or something like that. but at least some sort of like targeting and you know, player agency would be really nice at least. Now let's talk about the chaos perks. So we have yeah, this stuff here as well. So you basically get 2 season themes in one. So you have the typical like D4 style powers. You have 4 choices to make. There is 1 unique slot, and then you can do any combination of the others in these other 3 slots. The unique has like 3 generic ones, 1 class specific. And some of them are pretty impactful. So it depends a little bit on the build, but again, like some of those powers can give you like double, triple damage or so just by themselves. In some cases, we have the druids as well. That's like the overabundance node. That's, well, pretty buggy to be honest right now. But that gives you like a times 9,000 damage multi or so. So people were actually clearing pit 150 with druids, but that is obviously going to get nuked because, yeah, because it was not working as it should. But overall, yeah, it's kind of wild. But not just that, it also kind of leaves a bit to be desired, to be honest. I do like that there are kind of like really interesting choices. So Beast Cornered, for example, we now get like the option to play like a low life build, and you get like a damage buff from that. And yeah, in practice, it seems like this is, for example, just like pretty negative quality of life, and that's about it. Because people will have, for example, Beast Cornered, and then it will, like, for example, go Marred Guard, and then you just like have your life pool permanently at 50%, and it seems kind of weird. It feels kind of weird to do this kind of stuff, but this is like what you do. And likewise, we have, you know, some of those other powers here, where it just doesn't really feel right. So the barbs have like the best example here, maybe with the single-minded fury. So I like the idea that now you can get more overpower chance, that, you know, now do something else with your gear. But in practice, this was like omega weak because it could only equip 1 of your items. So for example, in your weapons, you could only have 1 2-handed sword, and you had to leave empty the dual wield and the 2-handed mace slot, for example, in order to use this perk. So this made this like pretty terrible, and people were just using other ones. And we also have like others that just like really kind of destroy the flow and the feel of many builds. So while they open up some kind of cool combos, like overall it just like didn't feel great to play some builds when I tried this on the PTR. So one reason is also, for example, the chaos items I just described. We are replacing boots on almost every single slot. We don't have a boots implicit anymore. We don't get the evade mod where we get more evades, or we get evade cooldown reduction, for example, unless you specifically go for a pair of boots that does that or so. But yeah, overall, this is kind of an issue, I feel. And likewise with those perks here, there's like so much stuff where, okay, now you have to be low life all the time, your screen is flashing red, or you get like a 3 seconds cooldown for your basic skill, and then, you know, it doesn't really feel good to have like a real flow of combat. Yeah, this power is really, really strong, but then you have to figure out your cooldown with this. And yeah, something like, you know, the others here, like the alternating alterations, you have to like cycle one and then the other core skill. And I don't think a lot of people would really like to do this. It just, yeah, opens up some new stuff, but overall, most of them just didn't feel great. And I can say something kind of similar for most of these perks. Everything is just like kind of too clunky or too random. So here is another example, chaotic cooldowns. You would think, hey, I would really like to use this, and then, you know, maybe it helps me with like spamming my stuff more often, and it does that in some cases. So it sets your cooldown to potentially very low value, but you never know how low, how long it will take. And most of the time when you make a build, for example, you want to have, you know, certain effects up with a certain amount of time, or you want to press it, you know, every single pack. So consistently you want to try to find the right cooldown value in order to use that skill. And with this, you can't really rely on muscle memory. You can't, you know, really rely on anything basically. So this is one of those cases where I feel, yeah, it's interesting, but the practice is just terrible to play, basically. That being said, there are also good examples. So I've been kind of negative about this, but there is really cool stuff as well. So for example, Deafening Chorus is the opposite of what I just described. It makes all of your shouts permanent if you're a barb, for example, and you can actually use this to make a build that synergizes with casting shouts like Dust Devil Generation. I've actually done it on a PTR, which was kind of funny. And that was pretty decent as well. So there is some cool stuff here as well that, you know, is just fun or is just strong, and you don't have to do anything for it. So that exists as well. But yeah, most of the time I feel like either it's like raw power that we don't really think about, or it's something that just makes your life more miserable. And I don't really like that. Then we have the new unique items. So I'm just going to go briefly over them. I did not really get to test every single one in depth with like all of the possible builds or so. But just a TLDR, Barb's got this one-handed sword, Saber of Zalsgal. This is a very cool item, so this is probably my favorite of this whole patch. It's just like really fun. I'm a big walking arsenal enjoyer. You guys might know the old Kratos Barb build back from pre-season that I made with like all of the skills on the bar. And it seems like this thing has actually been popping off on the PTR, so I'm very excited to try this out. So it really encourages you to go walking arsenal, use all of the different weapons, press your buttons, and not have just like shouts or, you know, some other like defensive skills on your bar or so, which I really like. But that being said, I think some skills don't actually count towards this limit. I think like Wrath of the Berserker, even though it can deal damage, does not count, for example. But there are some cases like that where maybe they could do a bit of tweaking, but overall I like the design. Then we have Druid, Killed of Blackwing. So they are making a Ravens build possible. They have been trying for a while with some aspects and so on. And turns out this is actually popping off quite a lot as well. Very good item. I was playing this on a PTR. I was like easily cruising through like 100 plus pits with this. And I think this is going to be one of the bigger items and one of the bigger builds on a Druid out there. It also felt pretty decent to play. You can cast Ravens while moving, so you can play WASD and just like cast all around you and like spam AoE casts basically. It felt more like a, not like a minion build, more like a just like an AoE caster that was extremely mobile. And that was pretty fun. Then we had the Necromancer, Gospel of the Devotee. That item is relatively trash, I think. I guess the main thing that you really can do here is something with Bone Splinters, which actually gets like a decent effect. So Bone Splinters now pierce, so this allows you to actually make like a working like Bone Splinter build, I guess, and that actually seemed to pop off quite a lot on the PTR. But all the others, like these perks, are like ridiculously bad. Like a Reap attacks 10% faster is like so bad. In fact, most of the time you don't even want to spam it, right? It's more like a support skill anyway. But okay, if you try to deal damage with this, then you know, this is literally 5 times better, 10 times better, I don't know, 100 times better than this, right? So there definitely needs to be some new effects on some of those other skills here in order to potentially make some basic necro builds more viable, because they are just like not a thing until now. And this item devoted literally to basic skills is not helping them enough. So this needs some work. Then we have the Orphan Maker from the Rogue. So I tried this. This has this interesting reload mechanic, which you can see here. So this item is very interesting. I like the design and the idea behind it. I'm a big mercenary enjoyer in PoE 2. In fact, I'm league starting a PoE 2 mercenary, basically as we speak. And that is, you know, something I really hope would also come to this game now with the Orphan Maker. But it turns out this reload mechanic is not really it just yet. I think this needs some tweaking as well. It feels very clunky. It is certainly kind of like tailored towards combo point builds, which are forgotten, like, I don't know, for years at this point. So that is nice that we're getting some love for combo points, and potentially like the big kapow with a pen shot into a pack that, you know, I could like hope for with like a unique power like this, right? But I think the design just is not really finished yet. So first of all, I don't really like this every second reload skill mechanic. I think this should just be like a baseline bonus that is a bit larger, for example, because here, you know, if you use 2 different skills like Heartseeker to generate the base, so here, if you use 2 different skills like Heartseeker to generate the combo points and then Penshot to follow up with like a spender, then sometimes you might get a second Heartseeker out, and then this second reload skill desyncs, or you have to constantly remember, like, you know, in what order are you right now, and you have to constantly keep it up, and this is just really clunky. I don't really like that at all. And if you don't constantly pay attention to a buff bar, then you just miss this, and then you might actually lose half your damage, basically. So that is bad, and the reload mechanic is also just like a bit too clunky. This needs to maybe be tweaked a little bit to feel closer to what the crossbows do in Path of Exile 2, I guess. Other than that, yeah, it seems like combo point builds are just still not really a thing anyway, and the rogue meta is relatively unchanged compared to Season 9 anyway, so I currently don't have very high hopes for this item, but at least it helps, so we'll see where we get. And then we have the Sorg. They got the new ring, Galvanic Azurite. This is a lightning themed ring, with crackling energy stuff going on. Try this out a little bit. The like pull together effect is relatively whatever, so it's not like disrupts enemies, which is nice, but overall it doesn't really like just pull the entire screen or something, so don't get too high hopes here, I guess. But yeah, overall this is a very strong item. We have, for example, ball lightning build going on. There is a crackling energy build that you can do. Also, you know, potentially stuff like lightning spear. They also tried to make charge the bolts a better skill, but I don't think this has really worked out. But overall, this seems to be like a really good replacement or addition to, for example, Starless or the Tarasha ring on most Zork builds, or at least the lightning based build. So that's kind of nice. And then you have the Spirit-born item. So this is a very cool one. The Hesha Ekizungi. I don't know how to pronounce that properly. But this is a very fun item. I've been playing a lot of this, and most of my testing was on a Spirit-born, using this item quite a lot. So this is a protector. This is a gorilla ult item that gives you like a damage buff and gives you also tons of skill ranks, which is kind of nuts in some cases, because the Spirit-born can make every skill gorilla skill if they want, thanks to the gorilla main hall or the secondary hall with harmony. And like this, you can suddenly get ridiculous amounts of skill ranks. So this doesn't just help the normal gorilla skills, but it also just can help everything. So you can sometimes get some nice extra perks from all of your little support skills, or you can get the just like raw power of the extra ranks, or you can get faster resets from Prodigy's tempo. So it overall feels really good to have a lot of ranks here. I think if you like triple masterwork this thing up, it goes to 15 or something, or 17 with a GA. It's a lot of skill ranks. And on top of that, you have this protector effect. And protector is actually a thing now, thanks to this item. So we don't just have hunter or bust. You can use protector. You can use seeker in some builds even, and you can use protector. And it actually felt very refreshing to, you know, do something else with the Spirit-born for once, basically. So overall, after like almost a year of Spirit-born being in the game, I feel like we finally are getting like a huge like update to the class that really breaks up the existing metas, that really gives us some new options outside of like, okay, the Balazan stuff that we got last season, I guess, but that was basically just one build. But here we really have more options for almost every single build, and I really like that. And lastly, let's talk about class balance. So I mentioned this earlier already, thanks to the chaos items and the perks, everything is like all over the place, and I don't really see a way of Blizzard solving this, because they would have to, you know, rebalance basically the entire game in order to try to make this like somewhat okay across the board. I think it would be fine if like at least every class gets like, you know, 1 or 2 builds that, you know, easily push like beyond pit 110, for example, and that have like really good viability in like Tone 4 content. So as long as you can get there, I think we are going to be kind of okay with the chaos perks here. So I think this is in particular the rogues that are suffering here. It seems like druids are really powerful, Zorks have a bunch of good builds, Spirit-born is ridiculous, Barb is probably like kind of middle of the pack. So yeah, and the Necro also has like really powerful builds, relatively slow builds, but they do get a lot of really cool stuff with the Alter the Balance perk, for example. So Necro probably sees the most kind of like new setups coming in. So I think there's not that much to complain about it. But yeah, it definitely seems like some stuff could be tweaked. Some classes still have fundamental issues, fundamental bugs that hold them back. And I hope that Blizzard is going to take some extra effort to, you know, close those holes a bit and make it more fair and balanced for everyone. That being said though, I don't think there will be any shortage of fun and interesting builds to play that are also good in Season 10. The power level is generally pretty high compared to other season themes, I would say. So while some builds kind of get the short end of the stick, they usually still get more than in other seasons most of the time. So there's that. And some builds just kind of go completely wild, basically. So just kind of like something to keep in mind. The game is going to be pretty easy in Season 10, I think. It seems like they have not really compensated with like buffing monsters or anything like that. So as soon as you get your chaos items going and you have your full build, you should probably be cruising through the game. And also, in general, I think the progression is going to feel a bit more fun thanks to chaos items. You might pick up something that you don't necessarily want to have in your build, but then, you know, you found the item, so it's going to equip that thing for now, and then maybe you're going to replace it with something better. So you have like a bit more like incremental upgrades compared to before, where many builds, for example, on the chest slot had only the Shroud. And that might be pretty tough to get for some people because it's a mythic, you might have to farm the runes and whatever, and that can just be pretty tough. But now maybe you find some random chaos chest and you just equip it, and then you have like a smoother transition towards your mythic later or whatever other best in slot item you have. So this is definitely like one of the best parts about the season, I guess. while, you know, everything's all over the place and I don't really like that part of it, there is definitely progression that sees an upgrade here that will feel a lot better, I think. It also means that mythic items are generally just a lot less impactful than usual because you have those alternative items now, because there's some competition for those items. And in fact, in some cases, you do not even run mythics. It's like some builds just have such good chaos item options that they will just skip the shroud, they will skip the petition, and they will just have something else there. And that's kind of cool, I think, about this season as well. And that also sums up my feedback for the Season 10 PTR. So there's a lot of stuff that I think still needs some help. There's a lot of people that also have been giving really good feedback, more in detail about basically every single thing. There's a lot of stuff that I could talk about here, but I don't want to like blow up this video forever. I just want to give you like the idea and my overview of what I think, just like general thoughts, and hopefully the devs also take that away and start cooking a little bit more. So I'm kind of excited for Season 10, I gotta say. For now, obviously, it's PoE time, but yeah, in a month, I guess we're gonna get the patch notes, we're gonna get hopefully a pretty cool update, and then we're gonna blast Diablo again. So hopefully that's gonna be good. Stay tuned for my uploads, and let me know what you think about my feedback about the PTR and the season so far and so on. So subscribe for more content, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.